Welcome to Razor Branding Podcast with Jackie Russo. To learn more about how to improve your brand, visit brandrusso.com.
Hey y'all, if you didn't think you had enough of me last week, well guess what? We're back. Welcome to the Razor Branding Podcast. We have survived and recuperated after our all-day podcast marathon where we featured some of the most amazing nonprofit organizations throughout the area that are doing such incredible work in spite of these pandemic times and sometimes because of these times. And obviously they all have needs. So back with us today are two amazing organizations that I cannot wait to talk to because you talk about making the world a better place. So I'm going to welcome Amber Robinson and Patti Holland with the Bayou Vermilion Preservation Association and the TECHE project. Y'all, that's a mouthful.
Yes.
Hi.
Hi. Thank you for having us.
Thanks for being here. Okay, so I haven't done two guests before, so this is going to be really cool in different places like y'all are with two different organizations. So slow your roll. We're going to do one at a time. So Amber, you go first. Talk to us a little bit about who you are, your organization, what you do, and then we'll let Patti have a turn.
Absolutely. So as JC mentioned, I represent the Bayou Vermilion Preservation Association. And a few years ago when the organization was founded back in 2013, we came up with this sort of nifty handout. So I figured I'd use that as a guide to talk about who we are, what we are, and why we do it. So we're made up of a group of concerned citizens, outdoor enthusiasts, community leaders, professionals, educators, students, you name it. If you care about the environment and want to protect it for generations to come, you're probably a member of our organization. And we're a nonprofit 501c3 founded back in 2013. And it all started with a garden club meeting. Some folks gave a presentation about water quality at the meeting. And there was our founders, Charlie and Jan Wyatt, had moved down from Texas, went to the meeting and sort of started organizing with a couple of other really renowned environmental philanthropists, Sarah Scheffler, Harold Scheffler, and Babette, and basically, started this organization 2014. And we really have come together to improve water quality, advocate for conservation, promote education, and promote recreation. And basically, we want to leave the campsite, as Charlie once said, leave the campsite better than the way we found it, right? And we want to do that through the partnerships that we have with other conservation interest groups. And we want to do that by advocating to the general public, these things so that they can take ownership, because oftentimes when you take ownership of something, you want to protect it, right? And so if you recreate on the water, if you live in the watershed, you have an interest and you should feel, prompted to want to protect it.
I have so many questions. So before I get into them though, I want Patti to tell us a little bit about what they're doing over the TECHE project, and then we can start to talk about how these two things work together.
Sure.
Okay, the TECHE project was founded as a nonprofit in 2010 by a group of citizens that wanted to clean Bayou Teche. It's grown into what we call the Bayou Teche Renaissance. We have expanded our mission to basically bring about awareness of Bayou Teche for people living along the bayou and coming down to enjoy the bayou. It was once the focal point of Acadiana in that it was the transportation corridor way back in the settlement days. And so we're trying to bring back the focus to the bayou and away from the highway. And we're doing that by cleaning the bayou first. We've picked up 54 tons of trash in 10 years. And we're also doing environmental workshops, partnering with groups like BVPA and doing these bankline restoration projects. We developed a bankline restoration guide. So that's on our website, techeproject.org. And we are the managers of the Bayou Teche National Paddle Trail, which is a national water trail, the only one in Louisiana, and there's only 21 in the country, national water trails that are recognized by the Department of the Interior. And with that, we're getting grant funding. We're building this paddle trail that's going to have access docks for paddle boats. in every town, 13 towns, 15 towns and 130 miles.
Wow.
So anyway, we're busy, all volunteers, and it's a great organization to be part of. We're member based, so check us out.
Okay, that's amazing. So, Amber, let's go to, I know you each have events coming up. So let's talk about each of your events, and then I want to talk about kind of some overall missions and how we can make the world a better place. So, Amber, tell us about the Reviving Resilient Landscapes event.
Yeah, so one of our events that we actually started a couple years ago really, again, was prompted because a few of our members wanted to plant more native plants along the Vermilion. And that helps with stormwater management, that helps improve water quality, it brings about wildlife habitat. And so we had a bit of extra funds in our budget and decided to dedicate those funds to doing 3 bank line restoration projects. We did those, one on private property and 2 others on public property.
Wait, so for people who don't know the words you just said, although they're all English, those words strung together, what's a bank line project? Because y'all both mentioned it, so tell me what that means.
Yeah, so sorry about that. Yeah,
That's okay.
A bank line is basically where water meets land, right?
Okay, riverbank, sure.
Very, very simple. It could be a pond bank line, it could be a river bank line, and oftentimes you'll find, especially in the city, that our bank lines are covered in rock riprap, or they're covered, or they don't have any plants. Maybe it's just lawn. Maybe they're being stabilized using concrete. And so our interests are that, we want to beautify and we want to use native plants as a mechanism to slow down the flow of water, to slow down that erosion process that we find happening. So basically coming up with a more low impact way to deal with an erosion and water quality problem that we've consistently seen in our bayous and our waterways. And Patti will get into that much more when she talks about the nuts and bolts of our workshop coming up in at the end of the month. But so once we does that answers your question?
Yes, thank you.
Great. So so we did those 3 projects. They were a really big success. Basically, the lead-in was that we want, and I'm going to take this from one of our partners, ANPP, Acadiana Native Plant Project. We educate, we demonstrate, and we propagate. So basically, we're educating the general public about these things that I just talked about during the workshops. Then we have a demonstration site that needs restoring. And so we actually can let them see the plants, touch the plants, learn how to plant the plants, and then we plant them, right? And so the next level of that came about a year ago. We wanted to do it again. We didn't have the funds, so we applied for a grant through the HDR Foundation. And unanimously, we were chosen by their grant giving committee because they thought this was such a neat idea for outreach and education. So that was about a year and a half ago. We developed a series of workshops from the $14,000 that we were awarded, 8 workshops altogether, 5 bank line restoration projects, which included 1 project in each parish within the Vermilion piece of the watershed, and then 3 urban plantings, which we joined forces with Trees Acadiana. I'm going to plug them as well.
I don't come and plant these trees in my front yard. I specifically plant them in certain places along the waterway.
That's right. Or like I was getting to, we decided to do 3 urban tree plantings as well, which is still within our watershed, right? So just because you're planting plants not along a bank line doesn't mean you're helping contribute to the improvement of water quality and stormwater management. So we planted a bunch of trees at 3 sites within the city of Lafayette: Neeland Park, Acadiana Park, and Freetown community. All 3 sites just needed some beautification. So we went out there and partnered with Trees Acadiana to do that. And Apache Corporation also donated some funds to help give out the trees. The last part, though, that we added to the series of workshops was that not only were we educating, demonstrating, and propagating, but we also were giving plants away so that the people, once they our general, we call it a watershed community, right? So once they understood what they needed to do, then we could send them home with plants so that they could do the same on their own patch of grass at home and plant a seed, right? Plant a seed and hopefully get them to pass that seed on to their friends and their family, and understand, that this is a little thing that we can all do. You don't have to be, at the top of your government or working for an government agency to help our environmental issues. You can be at home and do something as small as plant a tree. So that's kind of where it stemmed from, and where we were going. We have 2 workshops left. We've done 6 of the 8 already. The pandemic was a little difficult to navigate. As a result, we had to do 1 workshop virtually, which we partnered with Patti and the TECHE project on. So there was a learning curve there because we, weren't necessarily used to that technology, but we were still able to give away plants. So we were still able to give away information online, and that was the key. So yeah, I'll pass it off to Patti because I know we want to plug the upcoming workshop in Breaux Bridge and all the great information she's going to share with folks there.
Patti, take it away.
Okay. All right. Our next workshop is in Breaux Bridge at a park in the center of town called Parc des Ponts, de Pont-Breaux. And it's the Park of the Bridges. And anyway, it's one of the trailheads for the Bayou Teche Water Trail. We have a nice trailhead facility there. And excuse me. We're going to go behind the trailhead facility, plant along the edge of that in like the terrace area, which is the higher bank. And then we're going to come down the bank and plant in the wetland zone and where the erosion area is, and put in native vegetation in there to beautify that area and make it self-maintaining. You do projects with native plants and you don't have to continue to do maintenance. You just let it go.
Low maintenance.
I love that. So we have links in the comments to both events for people that can go and sign up to the Reviving Resilient Landscapes event, and then also the techproject.org for all the things you have coming up. Ultimately, I'm captured by a couple of thoughts. One, when I think about beautification, my mind goes to litter pickup. And we talked to Katie Dupre with Parish Proud last week about the litter challenges, especially in our waterways. But I also think about the fact that, we're at the bottom of this massive Mississippi waterway. And I've been to the top of the Mississippi and have stood in the Mississippi River where it is 6 or 8 inches deep and it's perfectly clear. And I've walked downstream to where it's a foot or 2 feet deep and still perfectly clear. And I've gotten all the way up to my waist and still perfectly clear. And I compare that to downriver here where the Mississippi is not perfectly clear. So how much of this is stuff that we can actually do and control and help and fix? And how much of it is just because we captured the country's rain off, as it were?
Okay, you want me to take this, Amber?
Yeah, you're welcome to.
One of the things that we point out in our workshop is that what you're doing at your location helps clean the waterway. It filters pollutants. It does a lot of ecological benefit in that location. But what happens in your watershed many, many miles north, in the watershed, and actually the TECHE is tied to the Mississippi. So the Mississippi goes through the Atchafalaya, which goes through Bayou, which goes into the TECHE, and then goes into the Vermilion. So all of our waterways are interconnected. And so what happens many, many miles upstream has an effect on the bayou downstream. You can't do a whole lot about pollutants entering the stream, of course, upstream, but you can, through baseline restoration, help to purify that water as it passes through your area and make it going downstream from there as a cleaner waterway. The siltation is, the muddiness. That's just a fact of the sedimentation, the structure of our bayous. We don't have a rocky bed. Louisiana is deltaic. So our land base is made up of fine silts and clays and stuff like that. So they pick up and they go through into the water with the, so that's what makes it turbid and brown. And we had known to love our brown water. In fact, we have an article with the TECHE project called Brown Water Stories. But that's just how it is here. So you don't see through the water in South Louisiana because you have sedimentation. That's what builds South Louisiana. And if you have waterways that are restored properly, that sedimentation can do good and build land. And
Right.
so, on a bigger level through coastal restoration efforts and stuff like that, you try and take that sediment load and do things that help build land and don't cause erosion. And the restoration work that we're doing minimizes erosion as well and filters pollution.
Yeah, and if I might add, environmental conservation shouldn't be done in a vacuum. Maybe I should say that. It's a comprehensive plan that has to be put in place. And if we all just threw our arms in the air and said, we can't do anything about it, it's all, coming down on us anyway, then where would we be? So it takes organizations like the TECHE Project and the Bayou Vermilion Preservation Association and, the other, local organizations that are advocating for this kind of thing to go on within their watersheds. And again, plant a seed, teach people, educate children so that the children, when they grow up, they're teaching their kids. And it's just so important, I think, that we get the word out and, information spreads, and we do podcasts like this, and we post information. And a silver lining, I think, of the pandemic, at least for BVPA, I can't speak for TECHE, but was that it allowed us to really regroup and think about our message and how we get our message out through these new technologies like social media, our websites, podcasts. It gave us the time to think about those things, because we had to postpone and cancel. And I really think that getting the message out, which is a part of my mission, a part of the TECHE Project's mission, is so important. If people can recognize the problems and do little things to help, if we all do little things to help, that can make a big difference. Nothing's too small. I'll leave it at that. Nothing's too small.
Right. And so these events coming up obviously have a lot of benefit. I think about the point that y'all are making. We can't do anything about what comes downriver at us, but we can do a lot right here in our own backyard. Right. And so obviously these upcoming events can help a lot with that. Talk to me about the other organizations, because I know, no man is an island,
right?
Water pun intended. So I know this is a big group collaborative effort. Who are all the different organizations that y'all collaborate with to help achieve some of these goals?
Pat, if you don't mind, I'll take that. We started out actually when we applied for the grant. Trees Acadiana was sort of the organization that we teamed with first. They were looking to partner to do some tree planting, and we thought, well, let's do something similar to what we did last year, but on a bigger scale. Invite more people and be able to give plants away. So Trees Acadiana, for sure. Sarah Scheffler is the president. Acadiana Native Plant Project, that's where we source most of our plants. They're located out there in Arnoldville, right, Patty? They have a greenhouse out there. Lawrence Rosa is the president. He also sits on the board for BVPA. So we have a great working relationship with them. We source our plants for the demonstration sites, and we also source our plants for our giveaways, and we also use them as our experts to design these landscapes. So the one at Bro Bridge, beautifully designed with these amazing native wetland and upland plants that you'll see if you come out and join us. We also partner up with the local garden clubs. Abbeville and Lafayette Garden Club are two that we work with in particular on a few of these projects. We worked with the Freetown Coterie. They were the group who had a piece of property out in Freetown that was blighted, needed some work. The city came in and said they wanted to help out, and then they contacted us because they knew we were doing these workshops. crops to come in and do the planting after they cleaned up. There was some concrete and it just was a mess. And now Freetown gets to enjoy a little pocket park right there in their community along the railroad, which is really neat. We partner with municipalities. Obviously, the city of Breaux Bridge for sure is one that we're teaming up with on this next project. The city of Lafayette's been a huge advocate for us and working partner for us as well. The soil and water conservation districts, which a whole lot of folks I think are unaware of, that we have available to us through the Natural Resources Conservation Service. The Lafayette Soil and Water Conservation District and the Vermilion Soil and Water Conservation District really love the idea of doing this, and outreach and education is a part of their mission as well. So they got involved. Bayou Vermilion District, which is our local government, pseudo-government agency who basically cleans the Vermilion for us every single day. We pay a tax for it, but that's who's out there daily cleaning our waterways. They do an amazing job. So I have to say BVD is someone that we partner with frequently. Even folks like Parish Proud, of course, TECHE Project, federal and state government agencies like Department of Environmental Quality, Louisiana Wildlife Federation, Louisiana Community Forestry Program. I have to plug this. Louisiana Community Forestry Program actually came on board with the RRL program later. They heard about what we were doing and offered us grant money to put in educational kiosks at each demonstration site. So this happened, after we had received the HDR Foundation application grant. And so we're going to have these amazing, we're having someone design the graphics for it now, but it's going to basically describe each site, give some factoid about resiliency and watershed management and water quality. And it's basically going to lead you to the next site. So it's going to be a water trail, if I want to call it that. So take you from each site that we planted. There'll be a QR code, so that'll take you to our website as well, where you can learn more about each site and what we did at each site. So just so many amazing partners who, I can't even tell you how warm and fuzzy it makes me feel, to think that everyone is so interested. There's so many people out there interested in this important thing for our generation, So the list goes on and on. I know I'm missing somebody, but
that's a good list.
We have usually we have custodians at each one of these sites that's going to do the maintenance. I said they're self-maintaining, and they are, but in the short term, you need to water the plants,
sure,
kind of control weeds a little bit so that the plants can get a head start on things. We've had, the garden clubs, as Amber mentioned, but also the Boy Scouts have been.
Boy Scouts, yes.
So local entities that come forward to do that. And then not so much a partner in the bankline restoration, but a partner in conservation along Bayou's Vermilion and TECHE is the TECHE Vermilion Freshwater District.
Yes, yes.
They're vital in that they're the ones that control the plumbing, basically. And they're, in fact, right now we're about to have a hurricane. It's about to, take us out. And ahead of the hurricane, they draw the water down and they stop pumping, so that our bayous go down, and when we get the storm surge, it's not as bad as it could be. So we have some control and water level manipulations, and they're the ones doing that. So they make sure that fresh water's coming down and cleansing our bayous.
Mm-hmm. So Patti, when you talk about turning the pumps off and changing the water levels, I'm not in any way knowledgeable on that subject. Explain to me how that works. They literally control the flow so that when we've got this tidal surge coming or this hurricane coming up the Vermilion, it'll have a place to absorb all that water to mitigate some of the flood potential?
To some extent. You can't control nature completely, but as we'd like to think we can. But anyway, because the plumbing's been modified so much with the Mississippi River control structures and the levees and floodways and all of that to allow for all the development that's happened down here in South Louisiana, we had to, put in structures that are safeguards so that will help and to make sure that we get the water flow down the bayous in the low water periods, but also to help out for flood control. So they have these massive pumps that are coming off the Atchafalaya River that pump into the TECHE Vermilion watershed and keep our flow going. But they can also cut the pumps off. And so that's what they do in advance of the storms. They cut the pumps off. We don't have the water flow, and it draws the rivers down in advance of a storm. So it helps, as you said, provide some floodwater storage when the storm surge comes up and the rivers start running backwards.
It also helps with salinity too. I know Mr. Donald Segura, he's the director over there, who also serves on the board for BVPA, but he mentioned that recently after Laura, flushing out the Vermilion, whenever we get that backflow, that tidal surge of salt water, can help our farmers with irrigation. That's a big problem when we get these storm surges. That salinity, changes everything. It changes our fishing. It changes our agriculture and the fresh water that we need to irrigate those areas. So, yeah, I thank you for mentioning that, Patti. They're a huge part of kind of the watershed management portfolio, I guess, that we have going on in the TECHE and Vermilion watershed. And if you don't mind, I'll mention this too. So BVPA collaborates with the TECHE Vermilion Freshwater District on a water quality sampling program. I believe, and we may have to fact check this, but I think it's 18 sites that they visit monthly. And that's in conjunction with the city of Lafayette, TECHE BVPA, the TECHE Vermilion Freshwater District, UL. There's a few other entities. I think UL was the one that identified where the sites need to be. And then we've been collecting for, I don't know, probably 4 or 5 years. And DEQ's been closely monitoring to make sure that we're collecting these samples in a scientifically acceptable way that is, approved by our state government agency. So that's something else that we do on a more scientific side regularly. And we have a boatload of data now to kind of watch salinity levels, dissolved oxygen levels, so we can determine, fish kills, all that good stuff. So,
right. So I was able to attend a number of neighborhood meetings and discussion groups around the dredging of the Vermilion. And I know this is way outside of what we were going to talk about today, but I'm curious, do your organizations have a position on the dredging of the Vermilion? And if so, what is it and why?
Patti, you want to go first?
In the TECHE project, we don't really have official
stance.
Sure.
On the dredging of the Vermilion. I can say as a wetland ecologist and wildlife biologist as my trade I worked for U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service for 31 years and before I retired. And I'm opposed to the dredging of the Vermilion as a solution. It's a short-term gain. Most of our flooding issues, like I say, happen during these tropical events when the bayous are running backwards. If we dredge them and make them deeper, we make them better conduits for running backwards, saltwater intrusion, more flooding. It really backfires, literally backfires. And then you don't want to. We're getting into a whole different realm of science, but hydrogeomorphic characteristics of a bayou. Our bayous and flatlands are very sinuous. And as they go down with all that sediment, you have a cut bank and you have a building bank. And that if you have a natural system, it'll stabilize and you won't have erosion. If you go in there and try and dredge a trapezoid channel right through the middle and get more flow in those areas, you upset that balance and you cause additional erosion, and then you exacerbate the problem. So really, you need to let Mother Nature take its course when it comes to river dynamics. And, because we have so much development, it's hard for the bayou to stabilize itself. And that's what we need to do is we need to step back into the watershed, put more floodwater retention areas, take away that flash flood input that comes off the developed areas like Lafayette and rushes into the Vermilion and caves banks and stuff like that. You need to have a place to slow that water down, restore the banks so that you have the vegetation that also slows the water down, and Mother Nature then can take care of the problem. So
which brings us
like to go, instead of dredging a river, you need to put in floodwater retention.
So that brings us full circle back to your events, right?
Yes.
That's what we're talking about doing. So tell us again, for anybody who's just joining us, about the events that y'all have coming up and how people can sign up. And I mean, what do? We show up with our shovels and our gloves? Like, how do we prepare ourselves to really be helpful participants in these events?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. That's exactly what you should do. Bring some water, probably bring a mask this, pandemic.
Sure.
We are social distancing, but so, wearing a mask is never going to be discouraged. But bring your tools. Yeah, if you have a shovel, if you have a rake, we'll probably be doing some mulching as well. So definitely a shovel and a rake, and just good old manpower, some water. It should be a good time. You learn a lot, and Patti just, kind of gave you a quick synopsis of some of the things that you'll learn about. River dynamics is one thing for sure that she's going to talk more about during the workshop. So you'll get more details if you come.
That's awesome. So, I think of Louisiana as sportsman's paradise. And obviously we live off the land so much. We have still such a strong agricultural base. To me, it would seem like this would be one of our top priorities to preserve our state and our way of life. But it doesn't seem to get the attention that maybe it deserves. Am I misreading this, or do we feel like there needs to be more awareness?
Well, if you don't mind, Patti, I'll answer a little bit here. I think we do, as far as coastal restoration is concerned. I mean, Louisiana is very well known across the country, and I might even add across the world, for what we're doing in our master plan, and kind of combating that land loss, at least the rate of that land loss in the coastal areas. But I think that, more inland areas, there isn't really a focus for this kind of thing. But I think after the 2016 floods, government agencies, state agencies, and if you're aware of the Louisiana Watershed Initiative, you'll know that, it's finally becoming an issue. And as I mentioned earlier, and dredging, we were talking about dredging. Dredging is one thing, and I agree with Patti. I'm not speaking on behalf of BVPA. This is me as an environmental scientist saying, it's a short-term fix, and we need a comprehensive plan. And that comprehensive plan might be citizen scientists like us planting native plants where we can, when we can. That dredging isn't going to fix our problem in its entirety. We have to work together. We have to do these watershed studies, watershed-wide studies, to figure out how we're impacting one another. And I think since 2016, we're finally getting some momentum. It's slow going, I know it, but there's finally a voice to the problems we're facing more inland. So, Patti, I don't know if you have anything to add to that.
No, I would agree with everything you said. So, and it's a multifaceted approach that, even the smallest
multidisciplinary
project's too small. I mean, every little thing you do can help.
Multidisciplinary too. We can't just, biologists and botanists can't be the only people with a voice here. We need engineers. We need we need social, cultural folks, involved. We need academics. We need private sector. We need state and federal government agencies. We need everyone on board. And this isn't just a TECHE Vermilion watershed issue. This is a national issue we're facing. This is big stuff. People all over, I work for an engineering firm, people all over the country are being faced with these flooding issues, these storm issues, these climate change issues. And we're finally all banding together and kind of trying to figure out, okay, how are we going to combat this? And these, one-stop shop fixes we're learning, aren't going to do it.
Right. So you are both signed.
sorry, something as simple as putting, permeable pavement into your yard, into your development, and reducing the concrete,
Hmm.
can help with the amount of flow, and get water to go back into and recharge your aquifers instead of flowing into the Gulf of Mexico.
Well, okay, I'm glad you brought that up. I'll go that way instead of the way I was going to go. So, when you talk about that, I've been told, and correct me if I'm wrong, that a lot of the recent flooding that we've seen, like 2016, is because what used to be our natural aquifers, those fields that used to capture the water and be such a vital part of drainage, have been concreted over with these developments in these neighborhoods, especially south of Lafayette. So, what can we do differently to keep that from happening? What you just said about the concrete, the type of concrete used, that's a big one. What else? Because I know we're way off your original topic, but this is fascinating to me. And I feel like this is something we all should pay attention to make sure we don't have another 2016.
Okay, it's all interrelated, and when you say it's off topic, but it's really not, because
No.
everything joins together. And like I said earlier, we need to design more retention areas into our developments, and we need to slow water down and the flow, and get things to percolate back into the water to the water table, and then back into the ground instead of running off. And we have a lot of water here, but our aquifers, in some places we have, a declining aquifer situation, and so that shouldn't be happening. We need to, tap into the resources at hand, and do a comprehensive approach, and, minimize the developments in the impermeable surfaces.
And, that kind of goes back to those multidisciplinary teams, and, contractors need to be involved in this discussion. So developers, folks who are wanting to develop, because that's not going to go away. I'm not at all advocating for no more development. And I know Patti isn't either. That's going to happen whether, we're here doing our good work or not. We need to come to the table and compromise about these things, and come up with codes within our cities and our local governments that are conducive to watershed management and conservation and flood management. And using these low impact tools in our toolbox to do so. There are easy things that we can add, to our day to day, to our developments, that I just think, why aren't we talking about these things? Why aren't we putting those things out on the table? So I know it's a big conversation, but it doesn't have to be, if people would just, sort of come together on this issue.
Right. No, that's amazing. Now, you are both scientists, right?
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Not a lot of women in science. So what draw you into the field? I mean, where was the catalyst where you were like, I am all about the math and science, I'm heading that way?
You go first, Patti.
Well, I'm 63, so there were not a lot of women in science when I first started. I'd like to say there are now.
I think they are too.
I'm really excited about that. There's a lot of young people like Amber that are out there making a change and making it happen. And, my office at Fish and Wildlife in Lafayette, it was a state office. When I started, I was the only female biologist in the office, 35 years ago. And by the time I retired, it was more females than males in our office.
Mm-hmm.
So, it's an up and coming field. I always liked biology. So my interest was in biology. I started going camping and hunting and fishing, and all of a sudden it was wildlife biology all the way, and never looked back. But if you love the land, love the environment, and like I did, it just was a natural fit to go into wildlife biology for me.
That's awesome. Amber, what was your catalyst?
So I have a real interesting trajectory. I got out of high school, loved school. So I just didn't know what I wanted to do. Got a business degree first. And once I kind of grew up and kind of figured out who I was, I recognized I loved being outside. Growing up, I was a tomboy from Kaplan, loved, being on the Vermilion, the Boston, went to, my dad was from Grand Isle. We crabbed, we fished, we did all those things. It was like, I can give back in some way. I'm from coastal towns. And so my sort of like ammunition was, I want to be a small part of coastal restoration. I don't want to see my beautiful state go away, so that's why I went back to school and met someone at the State of the Coast Conference, which is our big coastal conference that we have every 2 years. The state hosts it. And it was a woman. It was a female. She was an engineer, but she was a hydrology engineer who was advocating for me to work there. So I applied and got a gig with this engineering firm, and we do marsh creation projects. We do bank stabilization projects. We do sediment diversion projects. That was sort of the big project I worked on when I first started here. But it led me to these organizations because I started networking and meeting people in the city. I'm from Kaplan, moved to Lafayette 10 years ago, and just wanted to be a part of my community. I wanted to serve my community somehow, and sort of led me to, more inland type work. Now I'm not working on coastal projects as frequently, but still my heart, because that's where I'm from. It's where I grew up. And I totally agree with Patti. There are way more females in the science and engineering field doing some amazing things. We are fearless. Women are fearless, and we have so much to offer. And I think we're finally like taking hold of our power and, what we can do in this field. There's so much passion and so much love and hard work and good ideas, and I see it every day. So it's really beautiful to be a part of a time when we can thrive in this field and really see change happen. So things are a changing. That's good
awesome
stuff.
So my oldest daughter, who is second born, and she is in her second year in chemical engineering at UL. So I'm not a science person, marketing, history, that's kind of where my passion is. So I love this whole push of women into science. Patti, I think you must have been a groundbreaker, kind of setting the tone for everybody that followed. So thank you.
Well, it was fun.
Patti.
I don't regret a moment.
That is awesome.
And we get to be in the field, which is probably my favorite part, which
There
means
were
we get to be
moments back
outside.
in the days where, you met with some of these good old boys and they looked at you like, well, little lady.
Yeah.
Or mystery and that kind of thing. And you just had to persevere.
Depending on where you're at, sometimes I still get that, but for the most part, we're very well respected. If you come in and you do your thing, you'll you have a voice. You have a voice at the table, which I think is awesome.
That is amazing. Ladies, I want to put one more plug in for the events that we have coming up, and then I know we're about to be out of time. So Amber, tell us about the Reviving Resilient Landscapes event. When is it? How do people get involved? And what are they going to do while they're involved?
Yeah, so Reviving Resilient Landscape Workshop, as I mentioned earlier, it's all about educating, demonstrating, and propagating. So on October 24th from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m., you'll come out to Brew Bridge and hang out with Patti and I while you learn more about bank line restoration, stabilization, low impact strategies for the Brew Bridge, the TECHE, right? But then also for your own patch of grass. Then you actually get to plant the plants and see the plants and touch the plants. So bring out your tools, bring your shovel, your rake. We'll do some mulching as well. Bring some water too, and your mask. And then we'll send you home with some plants, and you get to do that on your own piece of grass at home, and hopefully advocate these same practices to your family and friends within our watershed community. You do have to go online and purchase a ticket. The tickets are available at our website, BayouVermilionPreservation.org, or you can just Google Bayou Vermilion Preservation Association, and that'll take you to the site. And if you go there, there'll be an Eventbrite link that you can click on and sign up. It's free. You don't have to pay to come out and learn and provide a little bit of labor. And it's free. The reason we need you to sign up is so that we know how many plants to give away while we're there. We'll also do a raffle. Let's see. I have this great book. Let's see if I can find it. Native Gardening. We're going to raffle off this book. It's by by William R. Fontenot, Mr. Bill. And he's a huge proponent of native gardening in the South. So he wrote this amazing book to help you do your landscaping at home with native plants. And yeah, once you sign up, then you're good. You're golden. You can come out and join us on October 24th, which hopefully will be a beautiful day, and go home with some nice plants,
That's awesome. And then Patti, you've got something coming up too. Tell us about it.
I don't know if I'm trying to get that in. The bankline management
Yeah.
guide that the TECHE project wrote for the Bayou TECHE, but it applies to the Vermilion. It applies for most water, South Louisiana waterways. It can apply to a pond. So anyway, everyone who comes to the workshop gets one of those.
Yeah.
So,
Can you find it online? Can you find it online, Patti?
you can download it on our website at techproject.org.
Perfect.
Ladies, thank you so much. And to everyone watching, thank you. We appreciate your time and attention, and we hope you're going to be able to support these two great causes and their upcoming events. And stick around next week. We'll have another amazing Razor Branding podcast episode for you.